What's up, everybody? Welcome on into the Sunday Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Vorhis. I'm Aslan Hajivandi, joined by managing editor of Warchant.com, the ultimate Seminoles sports source, Ira Schoffel. Check out his work over at Warchant.com, including a 3-2-1 forthcoming, all over at the website. Big recruiting news. We'll talk about that as well, right, Ira? Big 5-star flip.
It is.
But we come to you courtesy of our good friend Russ Vorhis, a fervent Florida State fan and supporter, also a State Farm agent that can hook you up if you're not only in Florida, but elsewhere in the southeast of this great land of ours.
Yeah, definitely. Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, basically anywhere in those states. His two offices over in the Jacksonville area. So if you live in that part of the state, you can go see him in person. Otherwise, you can go to the website, russvorhis.com, and get, consultations, quote, more information, and then they'll set up a one-on-one setting, and you can see if he can handle any of your insurance needs. Russ is a great guy, and we appreciate him supporting the show. Absolutely.
Well said, Ira. Florida State, fourth in both polls still, holding steady after that 38-20 victory over Duke on Saturday night. What an amazing, electric crowd. Everybody give yourselves a hand, pat on the back if you were inside Doak Campbell Stadium on Saturday night. Ira, how did that game end up playing out for you? I don't know if that's the way you saw it. You wanted to go 31-10. I had 24-17. I don't know if anybody hit the bullseye on there, but do we have maybe a better idea of what this team is, who they are, and how impressed were you by Florida State's resiliency throughout that one?
Definitely impressed by the resiliency. I mean, that, if you had to kind of diagram the path for Duke to beat Florida State at Doak Campbell Stadium to get their first win in the series in 22 tries, I think the first quarter, maybe the first half, is probably how you would have had to script it. Florida State would have to maybe do some things to help Duke out, which they did. They went for it on the fourth down at their own 36-yard line and didn't get it. And then Duke punches that in didn't punch it in, but they got 3 points out of that. They also got a pick six in the first half. So again, you kind of gave them 10 points, and you can't do that. That's what Duke has done to all these others. That's how they beat Clemson. But I thought what was impressive was that Florida State was resilient, and they kept battling back. They didn't panic. They just started playing better, and you could criticize the way they came out and played the first quarter, or you can give credit to Duke. You and I talked about it before the game and during the week. I was not, bullish on Duke. I mean, I thought that their defensive statistics were very overrated because of who they played. Four of the six teams they played had offenses in the outside the top 100 in the country. And the two that were inside the top 100 were around 40 or 50. So it wasn't like they were doing that against good offenses, but I thought they were pretty legit. I mean, that was a good defense. I don't think they stoned Florida State. Most of the drives where Florida State kind of things didn't go, they didn't execute or they didn't score, was maybe they got to a 3rd and 1 or a 3rd and short or a 4th and short and didn't convert. But it wasn't like they were in 2nd and long or 3rd and long all day. But I thought Duke played well, and Florida State helped them out early, but really kind of solidified it. And then to win by 18 points at the end of the day speaks to how explosive they can be when they get it going.
Yeah. Do you think the perfect games, I don't know if the perfect game's the right term, but like this complete game, right, best game, like, is it ever going to come? And I'm not saying that like in a derogatory way. Like I'm just I'm comfortable with their station in life. I just feel they'll be able to grind out games when it comes to that situation. I don't think the next 2 weeks are going to be grind out affairs, but Miami and Florida set up that way possibly. And I just feel Florida State's probably more talented, better coach, and they'll be able to figure out a way through those games. Or are you still hunting that perfect storm, if you will, for this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only way you have a dominant game for 4 quarters to me is if you have a just tremendous talent advantage, experience advantage over the team you're playing. And, most often that's not really the case. Now, they did do that against Syracuse. You're talking about maybe a period of a quarter or something like that where they didn't play very well. But for the most part, they did that against Syracuse. They obviously did it against Southern Miss, but I don't think I don't know if people are expecting that to happen against top 20 opponents. This is not that Florida State team to me. This is not a team that's just going to overwhelm the opposition. So you wanted to play well, obviously. And they didn't play that great in the first half. They had to play better in the second half, which they did. So I don't know. I mean, I get it. I understand people want to see like excellence from the first snap to the last snap. I just don't know how often you see them. You watch college football. You watch a lot of college football. You probably watch more than I do. And I don't know, man, how many teams are doing that?
I mean, you could say Michigan, but then people will counter with like, who's Michigan playing? So yeah, it's not happening. I mean, Georgia again, barely eked by Auburn. They were struggling against Vanderbilt. We know Alabama struggles. Texas lucked out to skate
Right.
past Houston this past weekend. So did
Wash-
Oklahoma against UCF.
Washington was on the ropes down the stretch against Arizona State.
So, and listen, Ohio State, I don't think they're ranked are they ranked ahead of Florida State in these polls?
They are. They're 3. Yeah.
I mean, them and Michigan will figure, they'll settle that score. But like, is anybody scared about Kyle McCord and that, Marvin Harrison Jr., amazing, but otherwise, I mean, that quarterback, you got a better quarterback than all those teams that we pretty much just talked about. So it's, yeah,
It's weird. It's weird though. I understand some of the frustrations though, because, again, you go back and watch, the first, their long touchdown run. I mean, Florida State it's a terrible run fit. You basically nobody was out there to get contained. Jared Verse played inside and he crashed kind of inside. The linebacker got caught inside. And then the cornerback, Fentrell Cypress, kind of takes an inside angle and he gets caught inside. So it's just like, I get that. You basically gave them the edge to where they could score a 44-yard touchdown. That's not what you want to do. But I also think, man, I mean, I'm not throwing up my hands and saying that's just football, but kind of, the other team's scheming it up too,
Yeah. And listen, man, Duke, that's a good team. That's a veteran,
better than I thought. Yeah.
Well-coached team, man. Crazy thing is, I think more people have watched the Mike Elko interview on our YouTube channel than the Mike Norvell interview. And everyone's like, I love this guy. He's great. They play hard for him, man. Yeah. He's a pretty great coach, man.
Yeah, and I actually ran into a couple of people around the program last night, just on the way out of the stadium. People, part of the program, and they said the same thing. Man, they were very impressed by Duke. They thought they had a great game plan. They thought they, those older guys that we talked about all week. That you got a bunch of 23, 24, 25-year-old guys. It does mean a difference. There's something to, grown man strength. I mean, they've had an extra, you've got a guy that's played in a college weight room for 6-7 years. There's some strength that goes to it. So even though they may not have the overall athletic ability, that's a good team. I looked at the roster during the week. I think 40 something players on the roster, which is, maybe 100, 110, something like that names were seniors or graduate players. This isn't to make excuses. It's just to explain how Duke did this. They've got, I think Matt did a story during the week. They've got 7 impact transfers, and a lot of experience, and they played well.
Yeah. All right, let's take some of the questions from you fine folks here on YouTube. A reminder too, if you could hit that thumbs up, that would be really appreciated. So yeah, do it. Brett Taylor, my burning question / biggest concern: why can't we cram the ball down the throat of an opponent on 3rd and 2 at midfield, Ira?
So Aslan, when do you think the last time Florida State was doing that? 2013? Maybe 14. I mean, honestly, they didn't do that last year either. And it would have been cool if they did, because that was the whole thing last year was, Mike Norvell gets too cute in the red zone and down near the goal line. And it was because they couldn't cram the ball down somebody's throat, and they still can't do it. I mean, I think we thought maybe when they brought in these 3 new offensive linemen, they were older, more experienced guys, Casey Roddick, Keandre Jones and Jeremiah Byers, that maybe those guys combined with the guys you had coming back would give you that offensive line. I just don't think it's there. And they ran the ball at times last night. It wasn't like they didn't run the ball ever. But short yardage, they can't get it done. Now, is that, I don't know, is how much that is on the running backs? Clearly, the offensive line. I mean, I think on Trey Benson's 4th and 1 carry, the defensive end just gets by Jeremiah Byers like in an instant, and makes the play in the backfield. I mean, that's not Trey Benson's fault. I don't know if it's just one guy's fault. I don't know if that's a scheme issue or what, but clearly I get the frustration, but it's just, we thought it might come this year, but I don't think it's just clearly not going to come. It doesn't seem to me.
And even before Mike was calling plays with Kenny, right? They would do a lot of wildcat in those sort of situations, wasn't it?
To get numbers. Yep.
Yeah.
To get numbers. So that's, and I think that's I think the idea of being able to run Jordan more in those situations could help. But yeah, man, I thought Duke's defensive line was very good. I mean, they rolled in a bunch of dudes, and I thought they all brought something different. They had some fast guys, and they had some big space eaters. Yeah. I mean, you would like to think that Florida State could run the ball on 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, and they haven't done it.
You mentioned Jordan running the ball. That's obviously a big topic right now with, I guess, how limited we saw it used and deployed in previous games. And listen, on the programs we would talk about leading up to the season, we would just talk about how difficult it's going to be to defend against this offense for 60 minutes. And so much of it, at least for me, was because we know Jordan can run the ball. And not so much like design runs for Jordan, but read option stuff or, giving up on a play and making it happen yourself. Man, that was the closest that we've seen him deploy his full skill set since I think maybe like the Florida game. Ira, what do you take away from it? Like, is it a one-off? Was it something that was, maybe I don't want to say forced, but kind of something that was, underlined to emphasize in that fourth quarter to get things going? Or was it just kind of, it just happened. The game played out that way for Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, I asked Norvell that last night. He wasn't very forthcoming. It was a pretty short answer. I don't think they would acknowledge either that Jordan wasn't healthy, and he may still not be healthy, or they don't want to acknowledge that they need to do that. Almost like it's admitting that they can't run the ball traditionally, or they can't move the football without using that weapon. But man, it's a different team. There's no doubt. I mean, we've all felt like that all year. Like for 6 weeks, we've all been saying that, man, if they could just get Jordan running a little bit, it would open so many things up. And then sure enough, they do that on that one drive. When he started running the ball in that one drive, when they're down 20-17 and they take the lead, I mean, the game was over. I mean, it almost felt like you could tell Duke was going to have no answers once Jordan started running the football. And he only carried it 10 times. It wasn't like he ran it 25 times in the second half, but just enough to get those, to move the chains and get the defense on their heels. Cause that's kind of felt like in the first half was in a few of those drives, the offense just couldn't get going. It felt like it was stuck in mud, and Jordan, I think, can do that. Now the question is whether or not, I don't know if you have to do that in some of these other games. They're a 20-point favorite against Wake Forest. So I don't know if you need to do it in that game. And I also don't know how healthy he is. So, but it definitely, we thought it would look different, and it did look different, right?
Yeah. Florida man in Texas dropping $50 in the jar. Thanks, man.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate you, Florida man in Texas. We'd all like our Noles to look like the Kansas City Chiefs, which I think they just eked out a win. So, I mean, they were like 24-17. I mean, Florida State scoring over 30 points every game. So Speak for yourself, Florida man. But hey, at least we don't have to hear about Taylor Swift during every broadcast. Go Noles, #finish the climb. You almost think like we had it planned out to do it this way, Florida man in Texas. But did you see this? Did you see this, Ira? Over on Twitter, the First Lady of America in some corners hanging out with
I did with Bernie Kosar.
I mean, somebody give him like some straws to chew on or something so it isn't bite his own tongue off. But
Bernie's had an interesting life, I think. And so I guess that's a real thing, right? Like the first couple of weeks, man, I thought it was a publicity stunt or something. Although some people came back and like, does the NFL need publicity? Does Taylor Swift need publicity? That's fair enough. But it seems to be the real deal.
Thank you, Florida man in Texas. Austin Flowers, your thoughts on game day possibly coming to Tallahassee for the Miami game? I'll pull up the schedule here, Ira. It's looking a little bit more favorable for Florida State, especially after Penn State lost to Ohio State this past weekend. But that still is the same week that Michigan goes to Happy Valley and plays Penn State. But that game is on.
And it lost a little bit of luster.
Yeah, so I don't know if Utah at Washington, but they've already been in Washington. So, I mean, I guess if Miami holds serve the next 2 weeks, that makes it a little bit more favorable.
I think if Miami keeps winning and Florida State keeps winning, you got a shot. I mean, Michigan – I mean, it's obviously a hot story, but like you said, the game's on Fox. Yeah. At least
Ole Miss, Georgia. I mean, Ole Miss kind of has the driver's seat. Well, no, because Alabama's only got the one loss. I was gonna say that might be like a preview almost of the SEC championship game, but I don't know if they'll go to Ole Miss or Georgia. But yeah, certainly that's the last and only hope for Florida State to get game day here would be for the Miami game. So. But it looks better, looks encouraging, and you figure you got these two manageable games against Wake Forest and Pitt these next 2 weeks, so you should be in a great position for that. Florida State fan 1993 with $10 in the jar. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Or, man.
Can we get an explanation on why Jordan Travis has been super hesitant to run and why he seems hesitant to hit underneath routes? The underneath routes, man. Where's the drag route at, man? I want some drag routes. I want some square ins, Ira. I love Johnny Wilson and Keon's deep shots, but underneath is an option too. Go Noles.
I mean, I think FSU fan, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. If you watch that game, I thought they really did. I mean, Jordan threw a ton over the middle, hit the tight ends a ton. I mean, Jaheim Bell was the leading receiver with 8 catches. Morlock caught passes. Keyston Douglas caught passes. Didn't do much with the slot receivers, but Destin Hill also didn't play. So I don't know. I understand what you're saying. I mean, I think that has been a concern somewhat this season, but the way Duke played, it kind of opened up that other underneath stuff. Duke played a lot of too high safeties, and it seemed like they were not going to let Keon or Johnny, get the streaking, 60-yard completions. They did a pretty good job on that, and partly by scheme. And so Florida State countered by doing a good job with the tight ends. As far as being hesitant to run, man, yeah, I think it's a slight, if I had to put it, I'd say it's 75%, 80% him not being healthy and then wanting to make sure he's healthy and not leaning on that and risking him getting hurt. And then maybe 20% or 15 or 20% is more just trying to kind of not have that be the focal point of the offense. I don't think that's what they want this offense to be. But also, again, it's not just that he's not healthy, but also kind of keeping him healthy. So I think they're going to be judicious with it. I think it was good in this game if they needed it, but I don't know if they're going to, I wouldn't be shocked at all if they beat Wake Forest next week and they can beat them without Jordan running it. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't run it much.
Let's go to Hal Weaver here. This was the thesis for a potential Corey Clark column, but thankfully everything worked out to where it didn't have to be. But Hal wonders here, Ira, any concern that Hal has that you could echo about that at some point, some of this aggressiveness on 4th down and being unable to convert is going to cost Florida State a game?
Yeah, man, it certainly could. I think it happened at Oregon to some degree. At least, you can make that argument in their loss to Washington. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a problem at all with the first one. I don't think anybody had a problem with the first one. Doing it at 4th and 1 at the 36, it felt a little too cavalier against a team that's a good, solid team. Now, Norvell may have thought that they could score. We don't know what's going through his mind. Like we clearly knew a week ago at Syracuse when he was doing it, some of those aggressive decisions, that it was easy to surmise that he knew Syracuse could not move the football. So he could take those chances, and it wasn't going to hurt them because they went for it. Was 4th and 4 at the 4, 4th and goal at the 4, whatever it is against Syracuse. And he knew there was no way Syracuse was going to drive 96 yards the way their offense is constructed right now. This is different, even though Riley Leonard wasn't 100%, but you wonder if he thought in his mind that Florida State was much better than Duke, so maybe he doesn't do it against Florida in Gainesville. But I don't know, man. At this point, maybe he does do it. I mean, is it going to cost him a win? It could, but it also could win him a game. I mean, aren't we where this is like just a philosophical thing with certain coaches now, or they're going to do what they're going to do, and it's either going to work or it's not going to work, and we can all argue about it.
Yeah, I mean, he's shown that he's going to be aggressive on this stuff.
And, I mean, since he's been here, right? I mean,
and there's nothing that really hasn't. I mean, it's in game, it has, but it hasn't cost them yet. So, the law of average at some point it will. You just hope it's not, a game in Charlotte that costs you going to the playoff. Save it, defer it to next year against, whomever at that point. But this season, I think will be clean.
I think the maddest, a lot of people were obviously really mad that NC State game here a couple of years ago where they went for it and that game got out of hand. I think that they were down 4, down 7, something like that, or down 3 or 4, and then he went for it on their own side and ended up turning into a 2-score game because he went for it on his own side of the field. So, I mean, it definitely can backfire.
Cody Carnline in the house, dropping Alexander Hamilton in the jar. Thanks, Code.
Thanks, Cody.
Cody says, I thought Braden Fisk was the master of disaster last night. Great game by him.
He did play well. That whole defensive line did. If you look at their production by snap count, it's really impressive. I mean, I think he had 5 tackles and he was on the field for 39 plays. I mean, that's pretty good production. Jared Verse he was on the field 36 plays. Jared Verse had 4 or 5 tackles. He was only on the field for 37, 39 plays. I believe Patrick Payton was very productive for not being on the field more than 4. No defensive lineman was on the field more than 40 plays, more than 39 plays, and they all had 4 or 5 tackles. Fabian Levitt had 2 tackles for loss. Fabian Levitt was only on the field for 25 snaps, and he had 2 tackles for loss, and one of them was huge. So that whole line played really well. But yeah, I think Fisk definitely played well. I thought his
special teams Fisk too.
Yeah, he did. He had the block on the Deuce Span's long kickoff return. I thought Braden Fisk's answer was interesting when I talked to him. I asked him about the rotation on defensive line and how much that helped, and he said, yeah, that's part of it, but also like we just decided like we were done with that. Like basically in the second half, he didn't think it was just. He thought Duke was very physical with them and brought the fight to them, and he thought in the second half they brought the fight more. Now that leads to the question from a lot of people who will be like, well, why didn't you guys bring the fight in the first half? And I mean, I guess that's just what you do.
They're humans, everybody. They're humans. They're not robots after all here. Let's see right here. There's one I wanted to get to. Kind of pop it up here. Let's talk about Armando Blunt real quick, Ira, or maybe not even real quick.
Yeah.
LJ McCray goes to Florida, commits on Saturday. Armando Blunt, who I don't know, has he reclassified or he plans on reclassifying possibly to 2024?
Yeah, I mean, I think he plans to. From everything we've heard, his family, or his mother, I think had told Michael that before, and that's been the talk. And I think there's another report that it sounds like that's what's going to happen. And again, like sometimes that has to actually happen. Sometimes players want to, but they can't always. But yeah, he's classified right now for 2025. He's planning to reclassify for 2024, which means he would be part of this class that they already have right now. That's a number 6 class in the country. And he's a 5-star defensive lineman. I mean, he's as big as it gets. I think, and he committed to Miami, but Florida State was definitely in it the whole way. A lot of people thought Florida State was going to get him the first time. He committed to Miami. He's from Miami, plays at Miami Central. And, but people around FSU kept saying the whole time that they felt like they had a chance to get back in there. And then sure enough, he came up this weekend and flipped to the Noles. It's huge. I mean, because they really need defensive line recruits. I mean, they just have not. They've got some, but I think that's a position where people were hoping that they would do a little bit better. And like you said, they lost LJ McCray, so this is a huge flip for them, and especially if he shows up in 2024.
Not sure what's going on with the screen here, everybody. He's not a no-star. He's a 5-star. He's consensus 5-star. He's also like the number 1 player in Florida, according to pretty much every single service out there. So don't let what's on the screen there kind of fool you there. I'm trying to pull up his highlights from his sophomore season because that's shows just how good he is. But I don't know. I mean, there might have been some hesitation from the fan base. It seems like everybody's clearly on Mike Norvell's side with good reason. He's proven that he can coach and rebuild this thing. But this is maybe one of those, another piece of that puzzle is being able to recruit like that blue chip high school football player that Hakeem Williams is, but maybe building some momentum and especially stealing a kid from Miami, always a good kind of combination.
And even more so than Hakeem because you're talking about a 6'6", 270-pound defensive lineman who I think wants to play defensive end, or that's a possibility. Still could play defensive end, or could end up being a defensive tackle. I mean, the comparisons that have been thrown out there by people that cover recruiting are very high. And yeah, these are the guys. I mean, elite defensive linemen are the hardest players to get, and elite offensive tackles probably are the 2 hardest things to get because everybody wants them. You can get a Hakeem Williams because there's a lot of great receivers out there. I mean, it was a great get for FSU, but that's more possible than to go out and get big time 5-star defensive linemen that everybody would like to get. So yeah, it's a huge, man. And that's this is the thing. Like we talk about this team, and we talk about why they don't play a complete game or why they're not blowing out everybody. These are the kinds of guys, like, to me, when you have a team, like that's what 2013 was. Like 2013 was a team of elite blue chip 5-star talents, maybe some 4 stars also, but man, you didn't have, this wasn't like journeymen, guys that have been in college football for 4 or 5 years, which is what this team has a good bit of. They're good players, but they're not that superstar level. And this guy, at least, by all the recruiting services, is definitely that.
Corey and I have talked about this. I'm sure you guys have talked about this on headlines. I'd like to hear you speak on this one. Eric Baker says, why is it okay to criticize Adam Fuller, but not Alex Atkins? The offensive line is okay, but he's been here for years, and he's supposed to be one of the best O-line coaches in the country. Shouldn't the O-line be better?
No, you certainly can criticize the offensive line. And you could certainly criticize Alex Atkins. I think the perception or the belief a lot of us has is he's doing a good job with what he's got. Again, you look at the guys that they've got on this offensive line who've been for Florida State for 4 years. These were not guys that were like highly recruited. Darius Washington was not highly recruited. Maurice Smith was not super highly recruited. Robert Scott was not super highly recruited. They've turned into good, solid college football players, but I don't think anybody thought that they were going to be like Alabama's offensive line. And then the guys you brought in to fill out the lineup, you're talking, Dimitri Emmanuel, remember when they got Dimitri Emmanuel from Charlotte?
They waited a long time to take him, man.
Yeah. And so he was a good player at Charlotte, but he was not a superstar. You bring him in, and I'm not trying to run these guys down. I just think we need to be realistic of what they had. Their offensive line, when, I was talking to somebody this week and we were in the press box and there was a picture of James Blackman on the wall. And I said to, somebody, I was like, imagine if James Blackman had even this offensive line, James Blackman, DeAndre Francois, and those guys had no prayer with the offensive line Florida State was rolling out there for 2 or 3 years. It was the worst. It was literally the worst offensive line in the country. Remember, we look at the PFF grades and like every single guy was like after 1,000 among the players in the FBS. So what Alex Atkins and Mike Norvell have done, they've taken that and turned it into a solid offensive line. Now, can they be the next step? Well, they signed a bunch of guys a couple of years ago. Jalen Early, Julian Armella. They've signed some, and those guys now are in their second year in the program. I think theoretically, as those guys get older, maybe that's what you'll have. But and so they've been kind of band-aiding it. You had the guys that have been here for 3 or 4 years that they've developed 4 or 5 years. They've developed into solid players. And then you brought in some transfers who were solid players. Casey Roddick was a good, solid player at Colorado, was not a superstar. Jeremiah Byers was a UTEP. He was a solid player, was not a superstar. Keandre Jones wasn't even in the starting lineup the last time I checked when he was at Auburn. So again, you brought in some experienced guys, but I don't know that any of them are like surefire, big-time NFL players. So I don't know. I don't know if you can flip an offensive line that quick. I think it's coming, but I think solid to above average is probably, I think, about as good as you could hope for. I don't know what you think, Aslan.
Yeah, no, it's, I just don't know. Why would you want to criticize Alex Atkins? Like, what is he doing? It's,
I get it goes back to the idea of why can't you run on 3rd and short?
Well, you had one of them. The 4th down that Jordan, got ruled. I know that was in a 3rd and 2, but it was a 4th and 1, and you probably should have got it. But point taken. I just don't know.
I would say Yeah, that's a good point. On Jordan's run, he was part of the problem. It looked like to me he kind of rushed into the block and wasn't really. They were trying to rush that play because it looked like Duke wasn't ready. I think if he'd been a little more patient, I think he might gets it. That wasn't all on the offensive line.
Thanks for being here watching the Sunday Smash presented by Russ Vorhis, State Farm agent.
Contact Russ Vorhis for an auto quote today.
Top 10 all-time chime, like the Netflix chimes up there. I don't, but like the State Farm chime just makes you feel good. So check out Russ at his website, Russ Vorhis, VORHIS.com, Jacksonville Beach, Orange Park locations, but get you covered even if you're in Alabama or Georgia. Give a holler to Russ, supporting the program, not this program, the program that you all care about, the Florida State football program, and the athletics as a booster. So give a shout out to Russ over there. Brian Beers, what the fudge? FSU drops from 4th to 6th in the latest polls over at ESPN. Sounds a lot like the announcer speculating about a weakened ACC during the telecast last night. Look at this. Things to not worry about, Brian, would be this ranking on ESPN because they have Ohio State at 1, which hopefully most of you saw parts of that game against Penn State. Penn State's 3rd. They've lost the game. Alabama's 5th. They've lost the game. Oklahoma skated, barely passed. Not skated. They eked past UCF. So I don't know what goes into the FPI, but yeah, that's what it shows. Florida State, but they're up 3 though. Apparently, it shows that they got a green arrow with the 3 firing up there. So I don't know. It's
I mean that the FPI has always been the most suspect of any of the rankings out there. I mean, I don't know. I've given up on that one. That one's not the best.
Their resume one, their SOR, strength of record, Florida State's 2. So that's a little bit more favorable. They're ahead of teams like Oklahoma, Washington, Alabama, Texas, Ole Miss, Georgia. So pick the ones that makes you feel better, that, confirms your bias, Brian. Don't pick the ones that make you upset, friend.
I also like that we've got like the fractions of the fan base on one side who are like, why won't they play a complete game? Why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? Why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? And then the other sides are like, why doesn't anybody respect us? Why don't they put respect on our name? And it's like, okay, well, maybe we can figure out how to get the FSU fans, or at least the vocal ones, to enjoy being 7-0.
FSU fan, you don't have to constantly throw money at us, but we appreciate it. He put $10 back in the jar. I think he's speaking for the people out there. He was trying to. The issue, he thinks, with Coach Norvell's 4th and short calls on the minus side of the field, Florida State side of the field, is not the decision to go for it, but the type of plays that are being called. Or should our master punter pin him deep? Yeah, with the defense you got too, I don't know. I think obviously 4th down is it's a make or break down. So the plays are that much more scrutinized. I don't know how many coaches have better 4th down plays in their bag than Mike does. But I mean, I understand some of it, but at the same time, he brings in Jaheim Bell to do a 4th and 1, like on a Wildcat, or they do DJ Lundy, but then Lundy gets stuffed, and you're like, well, he's being cute. Right. So it's this whole, it's tough to win.
Yeah, the only thing I see that seems to consistently work is the tush push. And, but I don't know, like, not everybody does it. I don't really know why coaches decide to do it or not do it. But yeah, no, I took more issue with just the decision in general. I just felt like, again, like if you look at how Duke has beat teams, it's by you helping them. And I thought taking that risk there helped them. Just like, Jordan's pick 6. I mean, you can blame Jordan for the throw. Obviously, he's the quarterback. He had the ball in his hands. Man, you're backed up inside your 10-yard line at that situation. I just feel like, man, get the ball out of that. So where your punter's got room to kick, you've got a punter with a real strong leg. He's punted 50, 60 yarders, and then make them drive the field and see what happens. I think if you've got better players than the other team, and I feel like Florida State overall does have better players than Duke, I don't know that you need to force the issue all the time. And, sometimes I think that aggressiveness can work against you. And again, like if they had gone with the mindset of playing a little bit more field position, then I feel like maybe they wouldn't have gotten in that hole. But then again, I mean, a lot of us used to rip Jimbo for playing field position in those situations. So I guess it is what it is.
Well, I mean, he's going to be aggressive on 4th down. He's also going to be aggressive when he's got a 6th-year quarterback on a 3rd and 12. And because, I mean, they converted, I think, a 3rd and 12 or like a 3rd and 11 later in that game to Johnny. So but again, he wasn't backed up in his end zone. But we get it. It's valid. We're just talking about here on the Smash. How about our guy Z-Chan? The good
Z-Chan.
Very clever with his tip in the jar, $38.20.
Too bad they didn't win 75 to something.
I know. Z-Chan would have done it too. I can almost assure you would have done it.
Appreciate you, Z-Chan.
Do you expect Jordan keeping the ball on reads to increase following this week? It was pretty amazing how much the entire game opened up after that. The screen call was perfect. That was. I mean, I could hear Ira. Like Ira's 2 seats down from me, and like when it all started clearing up, and he's like, "Oh," it's like, "Yeah, that was pretty. That was really good."
Yeah, that was good. I don't know. I mean, I think I don't know. What's your opinion, Aslan? I just think they're going to do it when they need to do it.
Yeah. maybe they'll do it a little bit more against Pitt just to have Miami fear it a little bit more, have that in the back of their head. But I mean, I understand you need to preserve and protect Jordan Travis, and you don't want him running the ball and taking unnecessary hits. But at the same time, like one of the times that he ran the ball, he didn't even get knocked down to the ground. Like 5 guys pinballed off of him. Like he normally doesn't take bad shots when he's running. I mean, the Boston College game, he fell awkwardly. But like when he got hurt in Louisville last year, that was being in the pocket. When he got his hand banged up the other week, I mean, that was him being in the pocket. So I'm probably the wrong person to ask because I'd like to see him run the ball more. Like I'd like to see more design runs or just, maybe a little bit more assertive on the read option stuff, because we saw that when he kept that one and he busted around, Duke was totally stunned.
Yeah, no, I definitely think, I definitely like to see him. I mean, if the read is to keep it, you'd like to see him keep it, because it does nobody any good if the defensive end's crashing down and it doesn't look good to give it to the running back. That just doesn't make any sense. Even if Jordan's not going to get a big gain, it's the right read. I mean, Jimbo used to say it all the time. I don't know if he ever had a statistical analysis or he was just saying it, but he always felt like quarterbacks more often get hurt in the pocket than when they're scrambling. And obviously, if you're running, you've got a better idea of what's coming and you can decide when you're going to slide or go down. Jordan maybe could have been a little bit more, a little less brave in that game, but I think he was feeling himself, especially once he the way the game was playing out. And there's once or twice last night I got a little nervous for him.
Yeah. There's an anti-Fowler one. I missed it. I'm sorry, everybody. Hog Watcher asked earlier, do you think we lose Fabian Lovett, Jared Verse, Patrick Payton, Joshua Farmer, Braden Fisk, and Daryl Jackson to I guess after this year? We'll say to the draft. I would think the draft.
Wow. Well, you're definitely losing Lovett. He'll be out of, and Lovett and Fisk, I'm pretty sure, are done with eligibility. So that leaves Verse. Probably, I mean, with in the world of the NIL, who knows? Who can say? But I would assume Jared Verse probably wants to move on and play professional football. I think Daryl Jackson, man, I really think he needs to play a year of football. I mean, it's easy for me to say, but I do think in an NIL world, I mean, there's no guarantee. Aslan, you definitely watch more NFL than I do, and you pay more attention to the draft. I mean, is Daryl Jackson with a couple years of film going to be a sure draft pick? It's to the point where he would make like guaranteed money.
Yeah, no, I mean, wouldn't it be like a day 2 pick? I wouldn't think. Even if he comes back, I mean, if he comes back and they win the national championship, I mean, he would have to do just something absolutely monstrous. I mean, like 3 TFLs in the semifinal game, a sack, fumble. I mean, like
throwing people around.
Yeah. I mean, just absolutely crazy sort of stuff.
So my money's on Jackson coming back, Farmer coming back. Farmer is a 3rd-year guy. It's possible, but I think he comes back. I think Patrick Payton comes back. I think those are the 3 that are definites.
Yeah, man. Fisk and Fabian were playing football in 2019. So even with that COVID year, that's all, folks. Christian Glass. Sorry, Ira. I'm co-hosting there. I'm moderating. I say I'm really not co-hosting. I'm just pulling up the questions. I love these, so I have to bring them up. We'll keep it like 60 seconds. We'll keep it moving. But Christian Glass wonders, what happens to the playoff picture if one loss Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship game, especially if Texas were to win out?
You do like this stuff.
I love it.
I don't love this stuff. I'm not a big hypotheticals guy because I'm going to focus on things I know or that are tangible. You have any thoughts on that? Because I'm when it comes to that stuff, like sports writers in the old days before the BCS or before the playoffs, certainly, if you were at a bar with a bunch of sports writers, probably anytime after like mid-October, they would all just start talking about the bowl picture. And like you got 15 sports writers and you'd get 15 different opinions about, I mean, this team's going to go to this bowl, this team's going to go to that bowl, this team, they can't go to that bowl because they're paired with this bowl. And I would always just sit there and just drink my beer. So I'm not a great helper in this one, Aslan.
No, you're right, man. I think one loss Bama would get in. SEC champion is getting in. The SEC champion is getting in. The Big Ten champion.
I've heard some people chatter that maybe the SEC could get left out, but you don't think so?
Not a one-loss champ. No, not a one-loss champion. Not a brand like Alabama. Like if Ole Miss were to somehow, like if Alabama loses to LSU, Ole Miss wins the West, they beat Georgia,
Right.
then maybe maybe, oh, the Ole Miss brand's not good enough, and Georgia just lost, and they don't have Brock Bowers or something. The Texas one is what scares me. I undefeated Florida State is absolutely safe. One loss Florida State, then you start needing the Pac-12 champ to have 2 losses, which could happen. I think the Big Ten champion is going to make it ahead of you. I think the SEC champion makes it ahead of you. But man, if Texas has 1 loss and it's only to Oklahoma and they avenge that loss, I get nervous because their quality of loss to Oklahoma versus whoever you would lose to here in the next 5 weeks is probably not nearly as comparable. But that's more than a minute. I'm sorry. Let's keep it moving.
No, you're good.
Keith Quaz. I want to see Keziah Holmes more. He runs with authority and hits the hole quick. Your thoughts?
He looked good. That was interesting. I want to go back and watch it again. I have not. I went back and watched some parts of the condensed game. By the way, is there anything that's done? Is there any better idea in the world, but more poorly executed than the condensed games?
Here's the kickoff.
I mean, I'm watching
7.
I'm watching. It's got to be a bot, right? There's no way a human being's deciding, because I'm watching the one this morning from today, and it's like they don't show maybe like a 4th and 1, but then they show 25 seconds of a celebration or an incomplete pass. It's like, what? It's more. Anyway, I always try to do it as a shortcut, and I realize this doesn't work. I need to watch. But yeah, I thought that Rodney Hill and Keziah Holmes to me are more upfield rushers than Trey. Trey, feels like he's got to get going. Trey to me, like Trey, it kind of reminds me of like the old school like toss sweeps. I mean, it's just like, man, get him going, get those guards pulling, and it's just like, man, and he's gonna just mow down people. And your worst case scenario is a 4-yard gain. So it seemed like in that game, because they were getting some penetration from Duke, that maybe it suited Keziah and Rodney more because they're much quicker hitters. It's like what Trayshawn was probably better at last year. So that's just like thinking back on the game and how it played out. Maybe that's why they went to Keziah and Rodney Hill, because they both had a lot of carries. But I do want to watch it again to kind of see if that's really what happened.
Z Chan agrees with you. Doesn't like talking about these hypotheticals. Yeah, I also think, I mean, this kind of shortchanges Trey, and I don't mean it to sound that way, but like those big home runs that he had against Virginia Tech, that's like that's sloppy pursuit, that's sloppy angles, that's sloppy tackling. Like Duke doesn't do that. Like,
100%.
Sound.
That's a great point. And Tom Lang, I meant to text Tom this because he nailed something. He nailed a lot of things. He knows a lot of things. His third and Lang pieces. But his third and Lang piece last week about the defense, he had a really good point about Duke avoids giving up those big plays because of the effort that turns what could have been a 20-yard run into a 6-yard run. Like the backside guy's going to come chase you down, or they might be blocked when you hit the hole, but they're going to get off that block and drag you down before you get low. So no, I think that's a good point. I do think probably the majority of defenses are more prone to it. I mean, I think you got to give Duke credit. Duke's more the exception than the rule, but I do think that's a big part of it for sure. You're right.
People asking about the commentating on the game, but we don't get the privilege of hearing Chris and Kirk on the call. So
definitely saw people complaining about it though.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess something about, I don't know. This doesn't sound disrespectful to me, but I guess it is. The wealth influencer. Why didn't media, all caps, us, we're all one, it's this entity, allow the announcers to put that percentage of 43% on national television? I think that was to make the playoff. They do everything to give FSU no credit. Go Noles.
I mean, I don't know. Does it matter? I mean, I guess the idea is that like I guess in 2014, like the frustration was because the narrative was being pushed. It felt like the narrative was being pushed by ESPN that in the college football playoff committee, that Florida State wasn't, the whole game control thing, that they weren't as good as they're just being undefeated. So there was talk, it felt like a real legitimate concern that Florida State, despite being the defending national champion, despite having the reigning Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback, despite having a team filled with NFL potential, and despite not losing a game, there was a concern that could they get left out? I mean, that was a real discussion. So I understand why you'd be concerned about the narrative. But I think the way college football is going, man, I think they're, like we've said, I mean, I think they're going to get in as long as they're undefeated. Now, if they get a loss, I guess that's when you get into the politicking and perceptions and all that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. And again, I didn't see the broadcast, so I can't speak to it. But I felt like going into that game, Duke was going to be the darling of that game because they're Duke and everybody loves an underdog, and Riley Leonard was playing hurt. So I'm sure that's how it played out.
Jeffrey Welch, sorry if already asked. Any word on Johnny? I'll ask you this. There's a lot of people on the Warchant.com tribal council, which if you're watching us on YouTube, there's you can join us
for $1 a month, I think.
$1 for
2 months
for the YouTube folks. So come over just for you folks. Take a chance. A lot of people on the tribal council think that not only last night, but also 2 weeks ago against Virginia Tech, lower body injuries were sustained by Johnny Wilson and nothing else. I don't agree with that, but there's kind of a growing sentiment on one of the threads. It's got multiple pages that, what are you talking about? Johnny's just tweaked his knee twice. I don't agree with that. What did you see? You don't have to.
I mean, yeah, I don't know for sure. We can't, but it looked like he shook his head, and he certainly fell kind of head first on that hit last night. The first game, I didn't get a great view of it. I know some people were debating, but last night, I mean, he definitely was woozy. I mean, he kind of shook his head, and so I did talk to somebody around the program last night who felt like the initial, and they didn't tell me what the injury was because Mike Norvell is not going to let anybody tell anybody injury information. But this was a person not in the team. It was just part of the athletic department. They said that they were hearing that the initial tests were good, that, it's not going to be a long-term thing. We'll see. But yeah, to me, it looked like he was woozy. So, which is worse, man. That's the thing. I think there was a time where we all thought that, it's easier to come back from something like that than an ankle or a knee or whatever. And it's man, to me, I mean, as a human being that has empathy, that's the worst thing. You don't want to see head injuries. So hopefully that if it was that, it wasn't a big deal, and hopefully he's fine because, man, he was awesome. It's going to get lost in that game because it was when they weren't playing great, but man, he was kind of keeping them in that game. Right. I mean, he was incredible in the first half.
There's a little snipe at Chris Fowler. Do you know, by the way, Ira, that I don't remember doing it. I didn't go back to listen to it, but somebody made a comment on it, so I'll believe them. I think I called the Syracuse quarterback Thomas Schrader during the Warchant report powered by Cummins.
Oh, okay.
My bad. I think we all knew I meant Garrett Schrader, but I guess when you're on national television and maybe you do it twice, it's Jaden Daniels, Jordan Travis. I guess, that's even both initials aren't right, but he did that twice. That it's a mistake, everybody. It's not, it's not showing disrespect to Jordan. I mean, maybe it sounds disrespectful that he doesn't know the quarterback's name of the game he's calling. I can get that, but it's, they got a lot going on up there. There's a lot of stuff going on, spotters and sheets and everything. We're not trying to, be disrespectful, but no one likes color, so I get it, I guess.
Yeah, and he's not I don't think he's a very good college football play-by-play guy. I think, and I mean, part of it is those guys are so spread out. They do so much stuff that, I mean, I almost think you're better off with somebody who actually isn't big time, because then they're going to probably put a little bit more homework into it. Yeah. But he knows who Jordan Travis is. I mean, obviously.
Yeah. By the way, I'll look at our guy Zach Ferris here, late to the party. Has a playoff picture been discussed yet? Scrub back 5 minutes, Zach. Scrub back 5 minutes, big dog.
Get Aslan's opinion.
Jonesy 1323 with $10 in the jar. Thanks, Jonesy.
Thanks.
Appreciate you, man. Just want to say I'm thrilled. All caps. This team is 7-0. Are they playing perfect football? No, but they are playing winning football. Love the heart they show every week. Go Noles. Amen. Practical response.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And I think, and again, like we've been living in this digital world now for 30 years. I mean, like, internet message boards. I mean, you've been on message boards since probably the mid 90s. I mean, I have the social media late 90s. You were
Warchant 2002, man.
All right. That was your first experience with a message board. It might have been. You were young. You were a young pup. I mean, by the mid to late 1990s, I mean, whether fantasy sports, whatever, you're on the message board world for over 20 years. Social media has been around for 15 years ish. Twitter in 2009, Facebook before that. I guess we should just understand now that like it is usually probably the vote. Not assume that the vocal people that are on social media and message board, just like it's talk radio back in the day, they don't represent the whole fan base, but it is hard sometimes, man. When you get on the message boards, you read Twitter and you see people complaining, it makes you feel like, I can only imagine what the team and the players and their families must think, because it feels like, man, are you not appreciating this? Because this is pretty cool, man. You're 7-0. Again, there's a bunch of teams that probably are as talented or not. I mean, USC is a train wreck right now.
Bad.
So it's I mean, I think more people appreciate it, what the season's been than we think, because I think we focus on, and at some point we'll learn, but maybe we won't.
Double D Supreme, $4 coming our way.
Thanks, Double D.
Thanks, Doug. Is Lawrence Toafili having a breakout year? Go Noles. I can't repent enough. I have short sold Lawrence Toafili at every turn I've had in the 4 years he's been at Florida State. Man, he just makes crucial, spectacular, game-changing plays. The one on Saturday, maybe not game-changing, but that was the dagger.
Right.
Breakout, I guess. I don't know if the nation knows enough about him, but I mean, he's sold me on being a legitimate, important part of the machine here.
Yeah, it's hard to qualify breakout, like you said. But from the Florida State fan base perspective, I think you'd say, right? Because I mean, it seemed like in the past, he'd had that when he had the touchdown against Clemson up there where he spun over the guy, and that felt like so out of the blue and so just like
flukish.
Yeah, flukish, and it wasn't something you could count on. He's had other plays here or there, but now it feels like he's a real part of the offense. I mean, it feels like and it's not a traditional role where he's going to get the ball 20 times, but man, he definitely has some impact plays, and he's got really good speed and I think underrated toughness. So he's a nice piece, really nice piece. I feel like that win was indicative of the fact that this team has they've kind of pieced together a lot of nice pieces to make it work.
It feels weird that they're so specialized almost. Like I love the obviously we all do, like the 2013. I just love the fact like you knew who your three receivers were all the time. Like it didn't matter. Like you knew who the three guys were. Meanwhile, like it's 3rd and 4, and like Darion Williamson and Ja'Kai Douglas run on the field. And you're like, what? Like why? But they convert. Like they've run a package. There's something they like about the look that they get with those guys out there, and they convert it. So it's like, all right, man, like I get it. Like I don't think I'd want to be that. I don't want to say dependent, but like have that many tricks in the bag. But man, they've got so many different looks and sub packages, but they work. So it's hard to really argue against it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Tommy Jenkins, $5 in the jar.
Thanks, Tommy.
Right. The offense, defense, and special teams, I believe, are ranked in the top 15. The defense gives up about 19 points per game. Adam Fuller can't be that bad.
This is another one, man, where I posted a story today. I wrote a story. If you're a Warchant subscriber, you can go read it about the defense and about, it was a pretty cool story. I thought Braden Fisk's story was pretty good after the game, talking about at halftime. The defense hadn't played terribly in the first half. The 10 of the 20 points were on the offense. One was a pick six, and then a field goal. I think Duke got 6 yards or 7 yards on their field goal drive. That was the one where FSU went for it on their own 36. So really, they had given up 10 points. They did give up a couple of long drives. One that went about 60 yards, one about 50 yards. So that wasn't great. But again, at halftime, you could have made the case that the defense was playing fine, but Braden Vest said that, they were furious at halftime, and that, Fabian Lovett stood up and was like, this isn't us. We're not going to let this happen again. They're not doing anything in the second half. And sure enough, they start off second half with a 3-and-out. And then, they knock out Riley Leonard, and then they cruise from there. So, I mean, it was a good defense performance. But anyway, I wrote that story. And then, of course, half the responses on our message boards, which I shouldn't let bother me, Aslan. I'm trying so hard. Are like, oh, the media is always going to apologize for Adam Fuller. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. It would have been better if they had not let the guy get a 44-yard touchdown run, for sure. That's not good. We can criticize him or the players or both for that play. But overall, it's just 4 games. In the last 4 games, they've allowed 7. The defense has allowed 7 points in the last 4 games in the second half combined.
Yeah.
Clemson scored 7 points in the second half. Virginia Tech's only points in the second half came on offense or on their defense against FSU's offense. And then the kickoff return. I'm sorry. And then Syracuse and Duke didn't score a point in the second half, so that's good. I mean, no, it's good. I'm struggling, Aslan. I'm struggling with it's hard to communicate with a group of people because everybody's got a different perspective. But those of you who are like that, who was that? Tommy? Who was that last?
Tommy.
We need more Tommies. Just take the streets, get on the message boards, get on social media. If you feel like this defense is not bad, and Adam Fuller's doing an okay job, get out there, push back a little bit.
Somebody commented, I mean, the things you want to maybe get upset about Fuller. I mean, they called the timeout on that weird substitution play there. I mean, like, okay, that one, you could tell Mike Norvell was a little bit upset with that on Fuller. But again, man, I know Riley Leonard only played like the first 2 drives of the third quarter, whatever. So that maybe skews it. And, whatever, Syracuse isn't great. But man, other teams out there still find ways to score points when they're got their guys out there. So everything, is contingent on this offense. I think the defense is doing good enough. If this offense can continue to find ways to have Jordan be a little bit more assertive with his legs, have John and Keon both available and healthy, it'll work itself out. The defense seems to be holding its weight enough.
It's not like, I don't feel like there's nobody that I've seen them play or anybody that I could see in the future where I'd be like, man, you'd be scared to put that defense out there against that offense. Yeah. So I think they'll give you an honest shot.
Yeah, I liked Washington, but then I watched Washington last night, and I was like, I mean, I get it. I mean, everyone has a bad game. It's fine. I still don't. I'm not welcoming Washington to come play us in the playoff. Like, I'm not scared about it. But I mean, they got a really good quarterback, and they got really good receivers. So at that point, it's like, what's the the shame in that? You go, well, Arizona State held them. It's like, well, I mean, that was an October game coming off a really physical game against Oregon. You look past them. Speaking of Michael Penix, I still think he's the odds-on favorite for the Heisman. Jana. I'm sorry, why did I say Yana? Soft J. Jana Watterson, what do you think at this point in the season Jordan's chances are for winning the Heisman? Doesn't seem to get the hype.
I mean, he's in the picture, right? Like he more often than not, when you see like the odds put out there or when people put their 5 or 6 names or 7 names or whatever, he's usually on those lists. He's not one of the front runners because he doesn't have the huge stats, but he's I think what he's got going for him is 2 things. One, Florida State keeps winning. And I think as some of these other people fall by the wayside, that's going to help him. I mean, we've already seen in the last few weeks, a couple of leading contenders kind of fall by the wayside. So I think Florida, he's going to, as long as he's
player on that undefeated team.
He's got that lane, right? I mean, that lane's available. And if he starts running, and you're probably going to get some good opportunities. I mean, I think they're going to, again, Miami, if Miami can sustain some success and you go out and have a really big game against that Miami defense, which has played well, then, and has played well at times, then that's a marquee moment. If you go to Gainesville and have a big game there, if you, the ACC championship game, if you have a big game there. So he's like, to me, he's lurking. If it was a horse race, he's probably, there's the lead horse, like probably Penix, or, maybe like there's a couple horses in the lead, and then he's in that next group. And man, when they come around the stretch, he's at least in contention, and I think that's where you want to be.
I think last night improved his odds just by virtue of him staying undefeated. Like he played great, but I don't think it was like one of those games where everybody in the country is like sharing tweets and like, look at what he did. But yeah, but as long as they keep winning, he'll be in the thick of that. So, do you think last night improved the odds?
Well, I'm curious what people were. I will say this, because the one thing I've heard so much about the broadcast and like the complaints about, the names being wrong or the
Lack of
showing
respect.
too much Riley Leonard or whatever, and all that's fine. I'm curious, like, if they capture the emotions in the second half, because my sister, who lives up in Boston and does not care about college football at all. She went to a university in the Northeast that does not have college football. She did not grow up on college football. She doesn't really care about it. She doesn't at all. Like, when I've gone, she lives in Boston. I've gone up there to cover, I don't know, 10, 15, I don't know how many ACC games at Florida State, Boston College. They came in 2004? So I've probably been there, I don't know, like 6 times, 7 times for FSU BC games, or maybe more than that, maybe 10 times. And not once have they wanted to go to a game. Not once. No interest at all. Last night, for whatever reason, it was on, and she was texting me the entire second half. And she loved the way FSU played. She loved Jordan Travis. So I wondered if maybe when FSU kind of took over, maybe there was some kind of excitement for the broadcast about Jordan. Again, I didn't see it. Maybe people can help us out. But she was really excited about the way they played down the stretch. So that could have, done something a little bit for him.
Maybe one or two more here. Last one here, actually. Dr. W.C. Partegas, I think.
Thanks, Doc.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it. $20 in the jar. Last night was a quality win. Agreed. The team played through mistakes and did not collapse as the fourth quarter door slamming showed. The weekly improvements reflect a great coaching staff and players that are totally engaged. More practical thoughts from the crowd, everybody.
Thanks, Doc. Yeah, no, I can't agree with that. I mean, I can't disagree with that. I think like that doesn't mean when you say that, it doesn't mean that there's not things that could get better. Clearly, there are things that could get better. But that, I think, to me, that's the whole point of that game last night is, and that's what I'm writing about. One of the things I'm writing about my 3-2-1. It was kind of like, that was kind of the anatomy of how you were going to lose that game, but they didn't, and they won by 18. So, and I don't think it was all Riley Leonard. And if you watched, you talked about that Mike Elko press conference that people are watching on our YouTube channel. He clearly doesn't think that that's why things went. No, I mean, the coach isn't going to make excuses, but unless you're Dabo, man, I think he just rolled over that kid with his bus one more time. No, I don't think that. I thought Florida State was going to win either way. Now, maybe they don't win by 18, but I think they win either way.
Island Chief says he watched a game in Seattle with non-fans. They enjoyed the second half, Ira. So there's some more anecdotal evidence to back up your sis. Eric Baker, Keon should be a Bolitnikov finalist at minimum. Absolutely agreed. That's rational. That's practical. All right, that's a wrap. We did it. We did it, Ira.
Awesome.
Thanks. Look at Ira. Man, Ira, all he's got to do, and then on a Sunday, he's got to come hang out with me for an hour, everybody. Give it up for Ira, everybody, one time.
Thank you, Aslan. Thank you, Aslan, for running the show, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thanks to our guy, Russ Voorhis, State Farm agent. Check him out, russvoorhis.com. 2 locations here in the state of Florida, Jacksonville Beach and Orange Park. He'll give you coverage in the state of Florida, Alabama, Georgia as well. So give Russ a check. He's a Florida State booster. Good dude. Gene Williams knows him. Gene's awesome. He wouldn't lead you astray. 3, 2, 1 coming.
Yeah, probably first thing in the morning, maybe late tonight, but probably first thing in the morning. And there's a lot of recruiting news on the website. Go to warchant.com. Again, you mentioned the Armando Blunt flipping. That video, I think he spoke. First of all, there was a full reaction. Thought about bringing Michael on the show tonight. We were supposed to have Dominic Robinson on the show tonight, but he had some flight issues. Thought about inviting Michael, but Michael and Tom already did a reaction video. That's up on the YouTube channel, so people can watch that. Blunt talked after Armando Blunt spoke to the media afterwards. So that video is up on the site. We'll have more on that. And then also, more recruiting coverage. There were a bunch of guys in town this weekend, so there's more recruiting coverage on the site. Plus, I think Corey's writing a story about Deuce Spann and his big night. And then I'll have the 3-2-1 as well. And then tomorrow, got a press conference for our trip up to Snuggy Hill.
Nooner. Winston-Salem, come hang out with Ira and Corey up there for that one. But yeah, press conference 11:30. We'll have all that banging on the website. Jeff Cameron Show 1 to 3 o'clock as well, right here on Warchant TV and 93.3 terrestrial radio, Real Talk in Tallahassee. So
and wake up Warchant. And wake up Warchant.
That's true. That's true. Thanks to Doc WC Partagas, Tommy Jenkins, Double D, Garrett, Jonesy, Z-Chan, FSU Fan 93, Cody, and Florida Man in Texas, and everybody that was involved in today's show asking questions. It's really cool. There's 7-0, everybody. Top 4, playoff bound. Let's do it. He's Ira, I'm Aslan. Thanks for watching the Sunday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhees.